put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to place. Good morning, good morning, morning, good morning, morning.
Good morning, viewers. We're just at about 7:17 a.m. and welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. I am Julien Skeete, and in this segment, we are happy to welcome on set with us Allan Stewart, Director of TEMA, the Tobago Emergency Management Authority. Good morning to you and welcome.
My goodness, I wish we were authority. Good morning.
Agency, my apologies.
Quite a lot more would have been done, but nevertheless, you see it into the future.
Yes, we've got to speak it. We've got to speak it into the beat.
Certainly. Good morning to all our viewers as well, wherever you are across the world. We do appreciate
all right. So on your last visit, we would have been chatting, and certainly we're happy to have you again as we look at the situation in relation to updates. And before we dive straight on into the vessel itself, I have noted that some of the areas, that first area in Lambo, appears to now be open in terms of the roadways and so as one. So just give us some updates, because I know previously it would have been in Scarborough and a number of the areas were blocked off as a means of continuing to work. But I noticed that we're seeing some openings, so to speak, or the setups are no longer there. So just give us some updates on that. Let's start there.
So we are day 65, and we have seen that some high degree of progress in terms of some of the goals that would have been set. I recall that, we were promising that the roadway would have been ready for reopening. That's between Cemetery Street and Village Street in Lambo. That area over the weekend, or over the holiday, I almost said weekend, was powered wash, and we are expecting that roadway will be open for vehicular traffic. And as we move forward, we also would have seen the endpoints in terms of what we want to achieve in terms of the level of cleanliness. The contractors have been tasked in a particular way, but what is more instructive is for them to know exactly at what point do you stop, at what point, what do you mean by endpoints, for example, in the Scarborough area, which allow for a number of members of the public, especially along the Esplanade. You want that area to be have a certain amount of cleanliness, that it doesn't offend, or lend itself to hydrocarbon touching anybody's garments. If you were to go and take a picture by the I Love Tobago sign, it's done properly, and you don't come away with hydrocarbon sticking onto you. And there are other areas, for example, what is the endpoints in the Cove area? It's quite different, where you have sharp, rocky edges. Nobody is there unless a fisherman chooses to go and throw a line. Then it's a different level of cleanliness. So we have set those parameters, and we have downsized, removed certain booms that are no longer in play. We feel definitely that as we move to the south, where Cove is concerned, that there is no way that even if we have any leakages from the vessel, it will affect these areas here around Scarborough and environments, Lambo, and these areas.
All right, excellent. So we're diving straight on in now, just as you mentioned, the main point there, which is now that focus on the vessel itself. What exactly is taking place at the moment? We know that there have been some restrictions advised, particularly to those who may be in the area, the boundaries and so on. For the benefit of our viewers and listeners, what's happening in the area at the moment?
Well, you are quite correct. The salvaging of the vessel is undertaken by the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, and they have started their work utilizing TNT salvage. And when I say TNT, I always have to remind viewers that we are not talking about a local entity. It's an international body. That is what they do, but they happen to have the name TNT salvage. So they have beefed up their activities and brought it to a stage where we will see by Sunday, it is expected that they will start removing the contents of the vessel, and we will see that beginning on Sunday, sometime during the course of the day. The preparatory works are all in place to allow for it to do that. I would have reviewed the medical emergency plan for the area, the risk plans and things like that We'll be reviewing those this morning to ensure that all is in place. It's going to an area of activity that has its own amount of risk associated with it. We have made the area as best as we can through the efforts of the Tobago House of Assembly, partnering with the Ministry of Energy to ensure that things are done above board to the standards set in the industry. So we expect to see, there's an expectation that there is over in excess of maybe 20,000 gallons of, or not gallons, but barrels of hydrocarbon that is still remaining in the vessel itself or the barge itself. And therefore that process of extracting it will begin as early as Sunday.
I get the sense from you that this is heading into another phase.
Correct.
But you mentioned a very key word there, always managing the risk. What are some of the potential risks? Because some would feel that, all right, it has stopped leaking, you're just about to move the vessel, but this is not kids' play, you just take it out of the water kind of thing. What are some of the potential risks at this stage that you are really hoping and anticipating it doesn't get to that kind of extreme?
Well, one, you have personnel that are operating on a wreckage that is not very stable. It's hedged on or run aground on the reef, so with very high tide, and the wave activity in that area is very violent in terms of how the waves behave. There are certain days that they have to, for safety of the workers, they have to remove themselves from it because there are risks involved into. There could be falls, there could be injuries in many different ways. You're dealing with hydrocarbon, so there is always a possibility of, let's suppose somebody has a slippage takes place where the hose that they're using causes spillage, and accidentally there is oil again in the water. And so you have those factors. You also have, it's a marine environment, and therefore the Ministry of Transport, through the division that it has a responsibility for the Marine Division, they have identified as an exclusive zone whereby there is a 500-meter radius set out around the vessel itself, the wreckage, and therefore mariners are advised not to pass between that area. There are lines that are used to, pulley lines that are used to journey the hose. It's a sort of a hose that is used, that is buoyant. So they try to make the hose that is bringing the stuff to shore. It is buoyant, so it's on the sea surface, so you could understand that vessels trying to pass between the wreckage and the shore, it poses a danger. Yes. There is also the possibility of divers in the water from time to time. You don't want a jet skier passing across there, and as a diver push up his head, you have an issue. Even though we are taking all the necessary precautions in terms of ensuring that the necessary flags and buoys and all of that, the indicators, beacon lights for the nighttime, if there is for the nighttime during periods that mariners may choose to be coming back or coming from sea. They are advised to pass on the right side or on the southern side of the wreckage. So those stipulations are in place. The Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard will be policing those activities to ensure, but we don't want it to reach to that where there needs to be any confrontation. So those public advisories, so I'm using this medium to advise and to tell fellow interests with marine interests to exercise due caution and pay attention to these safety advisories that are spelled out.
All right. And I want you, I'm looking for that assurance, most certainly, just as you have been advising the general public. Can we be assured the risk that you have referred to, that the relevant companies, the ministry, TMA, etc., part of the preparation work naturally is also to prepare in the event that something happens?
Yes, certainly. So a command site has been set up, so there's a command post set up there with medical facilities that will allow for if there is any injuries. There is a safety board that is established. There are OSH officers that are assigned to the entire project, and to allow for that type of scrutiny. The EMA are involved as well, the IMA, and all of the major authorities on board to ensure that the extraction of what they describe as the inventory, when that is removed, or what they call a cargo, of the vessel, there will be no issues. And I just want to make sure, because I heard you mention it in a particular way, the removal of the wreckage. That is a next stage. What we are doing right now is removing the cargo, or what they call the inventory. In other words, there are over in excess of 20,000 barrels of hydrocarbon that is considered to be based on the estimates in the vessel, and therefore that is going to be extracted first, being brought to shore, stored in frac tanks, and then there is another process where you move it from there to the Scarborough port onto a barge. That's the plan going forward. We hope it holds. Sometimes these things are very agile. You make changes on the go. But I could say here that is the plan presented going forward. So you want to look at things like your journey management as to how do you get from there to Scarborough. Is there a possibility? Are there risks involved? If there is an accident, what can happen? If there's a spillage, so folks like the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service, they are involved as well, so that they could be that level of response to any eventuality that may occur during this operation as we take it to the next stage.
I'm happy that you clarified that, because so let's just get it clear. The focus for this next phase in terms of the exercise is more so any further content and not the actual treating just yet. And it's important to clarify that.
And in the industry, they call it inventory or cargo.
Good.
Like a cargo on board. Yes. The cargo is that of the contents. This cargo is really hydrocarbon.
Okay. So then there will still be another phase that's right. The vessel itself. All right. Tell us, what do you anticipate? Are you able to project, along with the others involved, how long this phase may take in the process?
The first part of it may take up to 14 hours, I was told. Now, that 14 hours could stretch out into days. It all depends on the... but you're looking at measurements in terms of suction and how long it will take. There are many... the vessel itself is divided up into chambers. They take those into consideration. So you move from one chamber to the next. Just last week, just during the early part of the week, it was established that there were about 6 to 7 holes that were breached already. And when I say breached, they make the opening from as you know, the ship has capsized.
Yes.
So you have to get into those tanks, getting from the hull into it, and then making other holes, openings, in order to get to the tank itself. So that process takes time. It takes... you want to make sure there's a balance as to how you deal with these matters. There are some dynamics involved, air pressure, and the pneumatics involved in dealing with pressures from one end to the next. As you breach the tanks, something can happen where the internal pressure could allow the balance to move it outwards or what you have outside could get inside. There's a possibility too that you could have a mixture of salt water or seawater breaching if there is rough seas and things like that. So it's a very delicate operation. So even though I mentioned those hours could be stretched out in terms of time, in possible days. So we are looking forward to a steady flow. We hope that the plan will work, and we am very confident based on the level of the expertise that have made themselves available. It's very interesting. Maybe I should mention this, that there are about roughly 10 major companies in Trinidad and Tobago that are involved in the oil response business, and about 9 of them are on the island. And it speaks to the level, as I indicated some time ago, that this area of impact is very wide. It's not like, okay, a beach, just wash up on a beach. No, we are talking about 15 kilometers of space from Scarborough right down to Cano Bay, beyond that area. And those are just other phases that we will go through from time to time. We were reminded that from Petrobras that this is a long haul. It's not something that can be happen like that. Every now and again, there will be oil showing up on your beaches because they are oil that may have sunk in the sand. And as you have rough seas or high tides or inland water going out to sea, where some of these rivers are concerned, they are going to create a situation where what is below the sand will be washed up, and then you have to come up with a different plan as to how you treat with that locally. So there are discussions with other arms of the Tobago House of Assembly as we move to the closure of these endpoints with these contractors. We anticipate that there is those possibilities, and therefore the Tobago House of Assembly, within its resources, can deal with those spill. It's a matter of training, it's a matter of giving them the necessary PPEs through CPEP and other players to come on board to assist if they are clean. The beach is their domain to clean, but if they run into hydrocarbon on the beach, what to do? Do you put it with your regular garbage? No. How do you dispose of it? Things like that. What are the PPEs that are necessary for dealing with hydrocarbon? And those procedural steps are discussions that are taking place now, so that as we move from stage to stage, we manage it properly and effectively.
Certainly, and it's always good when we hear, our very own team are trying to stay ahead of things. Just as you just referenced and mentioned the fact that the after and how you now have to kind of cater for whether or not additional support, etc., would be required. It naturally took me to another question, particularly on Tuesday for Easter, in terms of the Easter activities here in Tobago. We had a little heavy in terms of the weather conditions, rainfalls, etc. And one of the things that I know the Chief Secretary spoke to is about having persons on the outside there, some not being able to come out and celebrate their Easter Monday and Easter Tuesday because they are busy at work waiting to see the possible impact of the rainfall and so on. What was the outcome coming out of that?
Yeah, well, some of the booms were dislodged. We had some interference. One of the strategies utilized is the utilization of booms in the river courses, to trap whatever oils that would have gone up into the mangrove, prevent it from seeping back out into sea. So they create berms. Those berms are blockage along the river bed, and therefore they use what you call absorbent. There's a technique utilized called tilting, where you use heavy volumes of water and disturb the bottom of the rivers, so it releases the hydrocarbon. It comes up, floats to the top of the water, and then you skim it off. Then you use heavy equipment in a special way where you get it in and tilt it up. So you do this tilting, and then you are able to do some extraction. Now, that operation was disturbed because you have major excessive rainfall that comes down the stream, washes everything, removes some of the absorbent booms, and therefore it lends itself to repetitive work that needed to be done in cleaning up. And then you had the onset of sargassum that really caused some challenges. Still a little challenge in the areas of we have about a week more of work in the Magdalena area. And we are hoping to see that comes to some level of closure, in about 7 days' time.
Excellent. Yeah. As we prepare to wrap this morning, what would be the message that you would want to put out there, to those in and around Tobago, those potentially wanting to come to visit the island and so on? Because, sometimes people hear and they tend to hear what they want to hear. So, Allan, and I think something might be more serious than it is. What would you say now, 65 days later, versus the impact of what you had to treat with from day one?
Listen.
How would you summarize the progress?
Right now on the beach, only oil on the beaches right now is baby oil. You understand? You could go on the beach, do your tan. The beaches are white surfed and wonderful. You know, I really want to thank the team, the level of expertise, the commitment from various levels of government was tremendous. You have seen the leadership of the chief secretary during this event and the support at various levels. The chief administrator office, and different arms of the assembly came to bear. The prime minister came up very early, and he would have indicated, you know, this is a national emergency, and therefore that was demonstrated by the Ministry of Energy and other players, Heritage. A number of different major players came out of the government, national government, and really put the effort behind this thing. International bodies coming. So I want to give all the assurance that we are in a good place, that Tobago is ready for. We have demonstrated it where we didn't disturb the carnival. The carnival went on. The last fisherman fete, I promised David, I said, David, you'll get back your strip, you know. So I believe you have something for me now. Yes. Certainly, because I was able to fulfill that promise, you know, in the sense that, you know, I am very happy for the work that went in. The volunteers, the banks, the various volunteers that came to the table, you know, I just want to say thank you very much. I mean, this may not be the right medium to do so, but every breath that you have, you know, you must be able to recognize the benignity that has been thrown into this. And that level of benevolence, it must be recognized somewhere along the way, you know. And, you know, this morning a thought came to me. I said, what we were walking away from this event is real experience on the island. Young men who, some of them don't even have a bank account. We have to pay them by cash, you know, whoever is doing the payment. And what you have is trained persons on the island who know how to handle oil spill. And that we now need to harness that talent, that skill set, and probably even give them something for recognition. So maybe the thought is some sort of a certification, because they are skilled at it. They know how to remove oil from the shoreline. It's not just digging. It's a matter of scraping. It's not just, when I use terms like tilling and those, talk about inventory. They know the language. They understand the process. They understand how to remove a glove. What it is when you're in a Tyrex suit and you want to do some ablution or something like that. The procedural step is like a medical doctor. You know, dealing with that level of waste is something else, you know, and the procedure. So I'm very grateful, you know, showing balance to it, you know, the people who were involved, and also bringing back the space to some level of normalcy. And so life could continue. You know, our schools can be reopened effectively. You know, we lend some real energy to those activities to ensure that not one day was the ferry service shut down. You know, early o'clock, Mr. Caseman indicated that, Mr. Stewart, the ferry cannot be oiled. In no way it cannot be oiled. We were able to boom it off. By Friday we had it boomed off. Thursday. By Thursday, thing happened on Wednesday. By Thursday night, just around midnight, it was completed. You know, and it means building. We have to build resilience going forward.
You've touched on the final area I want to deal with, which is looking at that future prospect for Tema. But we've got to take a quick break, viewers. So we want to remind you, and we're going to be back, but we want to remind you that this is your opportunity to share the live, share the live, share the live.
Good morning, morning.
Good morning, viewers, and welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. We continue the conversation this morning with Allan Stewart, Director for Tema, and we were just at that point in relation to the updates where we were speaking to that kind of future prospect, because notwithstanding treating with the severity of this situation, Tema also has that greater responsibility. We're in it's the rainy season, we're in the hurricane season, in terms of preparing simultaneously for any kinds of eventuality. Exactly. Tell us a little bit about, you know, in terms of the future prospects as we head into to those periods.
As we transition, it's important that we continue to keep our eyes on what next. But in doing so, what next involve also the possibility of a repeat of what we experience. There are lessons learned and there are lessons to be learned. One of which that we have to do the adaptation to allow for us to build resilience on the island. Building resilience is moving towards capacity, having the capacity to manage effectively. One of the things that we recognize that plagued this operation was that of logistics, to move equipment from Port of Spain to Tobago. And most of these, it happened at a time when it was like Carnival. A lot of people don't keep that in mind. When work is like, you know the tune, right? You're telling the boss, you're working today, you know, I'm feeling sick, I can't see myself going to work. And we saw that demonstrated throughout the event itself, where it was Carnival, the Wednesday before Carnival, and therefore you saw serious response taking place after. For example, the Cabo Star sailed the Wednesday after Carnival, and a number of the heavy equipment that we now see or saw on the island started coming from the Wednesday. And so as I talk about capacity, it is imperative that we look at our stocks. A lot of it has been used up. We look at, we learned the type of booms that we need to procure in terms of the risk factors as it relates to oil spill is basically on the Atlantic. While we know that it is very sensitive on the Caribbean side, if it happens there, all hell break loose. But we know for defense, we have to manage the Atlantic. The Atlantic Ocean, the energy of currents and things like that, we have learned that even the booms, we have to look at the diameters in terms of the sizing. So we are talking about anything in excess of 40 inch in diameter up to 50 inches. That's the type of booms that we will see us moving towards. And the footage, we only had 1,600 feet of boom. The Scarborough Port alone ate that up based on the arrangements that we had. We had a sort of a MOU coming out from BHP Billiton that went on to Woodsides, who took over from BHP Billiton. And it was the first time that company was tested, and we had to go through a lot of red tape in order to, so while I don't want to use this as the opportunity to do the after action review, but as you asked the question, capacity building is where we have to go next. We are going into the hurricane season. We have to start preparing now. A number of our resources would have been eaten up in this exercise, and therefore it's critical, especially with the legislation as it relates to the OPR, that will be a testing point in the sense that how utilizing those mechanisms, how quickly can the system of governance allow for us to procure these needed or resources that have been, or replenish our stocks going forward. Some of the same things that you use have to be replenished, in terms of those items, tarpaulins, things like that have been used for creating decon stations and things like that. They have been all used up, and we have to replenish that in preparation for the upcoming hurricane season. So we have our work cut out, Julien.
So you have no choice, because that gets going, the hurricane season, that's from June.
Yes, the 1st of June.
Yeah, from the 1st of June. And similarly, of course, depending on the areas you live, heading into the rainy season as well.
Yeah.
Also in the latter, going in, I think just around June also, or sometime there, for the reality that these things affect us in the Tobago space. I have a quick question coming in here from a viewer. What about the Lambo Cleanup? We need to know if we can do rock fishing again.
Yes.
So this
is
certainly a viewer wanting to know if they can do rock fishing again.
And I must tell the viewer that, they say out of evil cometh good. That there's an area in Lambo that the Tobago community go and fish, where they throw their lines, and we spend some time. There's what you call an endpoint survey team committee that has been set up, and when we reviewed that area about 2 weeks ago, there was suggestion by the division of the environment that we can surface the area in a particular way. There is this what you call high volume flushing of these areas where you just try to get away the hydrocarbon, and so you flush the rocks and you leave it for what you call weathering, where the sun takes care of the balance. And so there is a layer just outside the old fishing depot, that layer of boom that was set up by the Tobago House of Assembly, that was heavily tarred with hydrocarbon. And how do you clean it? And there are discussions as to, we recognize that fisher folks go there and fish, so they could see there are recommendations going forward for that area to be covered, backed either by, but covered in such a way that it will be improved for fishing. Instead of walking on the jagged rocks, it creates whether it's you use the tap bitumen and make sure that it's surfaced in a particular way where you could exercise on it, you could sit on it with a beach chair and do your fishing. So those are some of the consideration, but that is outside of the emergency. That is more under the project phase going forward. I did mention, probably I should repeat it here, that there is a project management team that is in place, and I believe they will look at some of these things going forward as to how you could improve the areas and as you bring them back to normalcy.
All right. Thank you very much, dear. We got to leave it there for this morning. Thank you very much again.
Pleasure.
Allan Stewart, Director for TEMA, joining us here on set to bring us those updates and certainly keeping us in the know with the happenings. Folks, please comply, particularly they're asking that we remain, what is it? It's a 500.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly. Please ensure that we comply as required to allow the professionals and the relevant, groupings to get their work done in the circumstances. And at this point, as we head on out to a break, we want to remind you that this is your opportunity to share the live, share the live, share the live.